One of the conversations that we've been having on the show, probably for a year and a half now, I'd say, is a conversation about what are the longer term consequences of this first Donald Trump term, the ways in which politics has changed, the ways in which what is acceptable language and discourse has coarsened. We've had a lot of those conversations. Some relate to alliances with foreign countries. Some relate to, well, here's a list of executive orders that could quickly be undone. Here's a list of executive orders that would be more work for the next president to undo. But one of the most important sort of changes or effects of the Donald Trump presidency is on the presidency itself. And what I mean by that is that the effect of the effectively total, I don't want to use that word twice. The effect of what has been essentially total immunity from consequences for Donald Trump's actions are going to be felt not just if Donald Trump gets a second term, but during the remaining, I guess, 11 months of this first term. Donald Trump believes now that he can get away with anything. And he's right to believe that because he possibly can. And this is why I do not believe we will have a peaceful transition of power in January of 2021 if Donald Trump loses in November. Look at all of the things that Donald Trump has gotten away with essentially no consequences. And I alluded to this earlier in the show and said I wanted to talk about it. You look at the Russia stuff. Okay, whatever your view is on it, his behavior was not perfect when it comes to Russia, but never were there really going to be consequences for Donald Trump from the Mueller investigation. We suspect that Donald Trump is experiencing some degree of cognitive decline or confusion. We don't know exactly what because we can't get an actual workup medically to figure out what's going on. But there is no way that the 25th Amendment is going to be used to remove Donald Trump. The emolument stuff, the ways in which Donald Trump has had foreign diplomats and others come and stay at his hotel in D.C. to funnel money directly into his family business. And then the bigger ways in which Donald Trump has funneled money into his own pockets when he travels to his own clubs and resorts, when his campaign funnels donor money right back into his pockets by using donor money to rent out event spaces and hire catering from Donald Trump's own restaurants and hotels and venues. We've talked about it all before. Trump's participation in Yemen via Saudi Arabia as a proxy in that completely immoral humanitarian crisis. There have been no consequences for anything, with impeachment, of course, now being at the most recent being the most recent example with his acquittal on both articles this week. Getting away with everything. No witnesses in the impeachment trial. A prejudged conclusion in coordination with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Trump's personal lawyer is running all over the world doing so-called drug deals. That's what Trump's own former National Security Advisor John Bolton called them. Arranging corruption. He now is joking increasingly about being president longer than the Constitution would allow. And in fact, I know that these are like 98% jokes, 2% serious when he does it. Posted to Twitter a video yesterday, which we're now going to show our video audience, where there are signs flying by saying Trump 2024, Trump 2028, etc. I get it. Big joke, triggering the libs, all that stuff. But if Donald Trump loses in November of 2020, I don't expect a peaceful transition. I expect claims, if it's a close election, I expect claims that it was rigged or that the counting was wrong and that he didn't really lose. If it's a big margin, if we do the thing I'm saying we have to do, which is turn out in such overwhelming numbers that we outdo the voter suppression and the meddling and the interference and all of the stuff, if it's a big margin, Trump will say, it's too big of a margin. It was obviously rigged, fake, and phony. It was fraud. We need a recount, or we need an independent investigation, bring in some kind of special investigator, prosecutor, whatever. Now, I've said before, Trump won't ultimately get away with it. If Donald Trump loses in November, I do believe that it is not going to be the Justice Department that saves him. I believe ultimately Donald Trump is going to have to leave, but it's not going to be peaceful. I still find it odd, by the way, that there are still so many people that think Trump will completely peacefully say, you know what? We lost. We had a good run at it. I will peacefully transition to the next president of the United States, particularly if it's, quote, crazy Bernie or Sleepy Joe or whoever it is that it will be. Trump is beyond unhinged. Trump has already questioned the credibility of an election he won. Remember, Trump won in 2016 electorally. He lost the popular vote. There is every indication that that is the reality, that that is not some kind of farce or fake phony numbers. And Trump questions it. If Trump spends 3 years continuing to question an election he won, imagine what will happen if the guy actually loses. So when I say, as I've been telling you guys for a while, we need to win so big in November that they can't cheat or that they can't use voter suppression to win or whatever. What I'm essentially saying is that we need a margin that is big enough that it won't let Trump deny the democratic process. And of course, again, if it is a huge win, he'll still try to deny it by saying it's too big of a margin. It's not believable that I would lose by that much. Clearly, it was rigged. I'm worried people aren't grasping the magnitude of this. We are, as I say before, sometimes I say it in a positive sense, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. At the same time, the long journey to authoritarianism also begins with a single step. And sometimes it moves so slowly that you can't even notice. We are well down the authoritarian road at this point in time when you compare where we were before Donald Trump was inaugurated to where we are today. Attacks on media and suppression of journalists and journalism that the White House doesn't like, it's just common. It barely is a blip on the radar at this point in time. Trump regularly gleeful and praising the authoritarian types that many of us feel are the most anti-American thing while criticizing our Western historic democratic allies. It barely even makes headlines anymore. And in fact, many Trumpists agree. They like the Assad, Putin, Kim Jong, whoever, Duterte types, and are glad and agree with Trump when it comes to his criticisms of Emmanuel Macron or Angela Merkel or whoever. By the way, Angela Merkel, no bleeding heart liberal to begin with. So Trump is a symptom of many underlying problems and not the cause, but he is an exacerbating symptom. He is a symptom that is making the problem significantly worse. He wants people to believe that voter fraud is the reason why he didn't win the popular vote in 2016, even though, yes, he won the Electoral College. Imagine if he loses the election, okay? He will do whatever he can to contest it. He will try to get it tied up in court. If he will succeed is anyone's guess. I maintain that if he loses, he will ultimately relinquish power, but I don't believe it's going to be peaceful. Let me know what you think about this. I want to encourage everybody in my audience to go subscribe to a YouTube channel we're partnering with. It's called Upflip. They release new videos every week. In every video, you meet a different entrepreneur and get an in-depth look at how their business works and how they became successful. It's great if you like shows like Shark Tank. If you own your own business or you're thinking of starting one, the Upflip YouTube channel really does offer a wealth of knowledge and inspiration. As an entrepreneur myself and a business owner, I've really been enjoying hearing all of the different stories of the people that they interview. But it's really fascinating content, even if you don't own your own business too. Go check out the Upflip YouTube channel. They're friends of the David Pakman Show. I'd love it if you would support them by subscribing to their channel. You can find the Upflip YouTube channel by going to davidpakman.com/upflip. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've put the link right underneath this video.